What harm could a music teacher, a piano teacher, bring to a public school? Well, we're going to talk about that in the second half of this show, where we're going to discuss a lawsuit that we have defending a piano teacher from discrimination. But in the first half of the show, I want to talk about something very serious that threatens religious liberty, true equality, parental rights. It's a horrific piece of legislation. And to discuss this legislation, we have with us on the line the Pacific Justice Institute attorney out of our Reno, Nevada office. Welcome to the show, Emily Mimnaugh.
Hi, Brad.
You head up our office there for the Pacific Justice Institute in Nevada, not too far from the state capitol. And we know that there are many issues there in the state of Nevada. That's why we opened an office. But this one is on a national scale, dealing with the Equality Act. We are taking this very, very seriously at Pacific Justice Institute, and we've put something on our website. First, tell the audience what we have on our website.
Hi. Yeah, we have put up a excellent new resource for folks on the pji.org website, and it will explain what the Equality Act is, what it says, and what it does. And it's got the information that you need to know what it claims to do, what it's actually going to do, and what we can do about it.
Yeah, and I think that's important that we really spell it out real clearly. You don't have to be an attorney to understand it. We spell it out so that people can see the real ramifications of it. On the face of it, it looks good. It's like, hey, the Equality Act. Everyone wants equality, right? I mean, how can we be against equality? But when we actually look at what's inside, which is what we're going to talk about on this show, I think people are going to be aghast to realize how outrageous this is and how contrary it is to actual real equality. Now, who is the author of this act? Where does this originate?
So this has been something that representatives in the House have been trying to push through for several years now, and this is coming out of a representative from Rhode Island who was actually the first openly gay mayor in America. His name is David Cicilline, and this is the third time now that he's introduced the bill into the House. But this time, unlike the other two times, this time he actually got it passed in just over 2 months. He's already gotten it through the House, and it's already into the Senate now, where it has 46 co-sponsors in the Senate. Wow.
Okay, so it passed the House, which is not the majority of the U.S. House of Representatives is not presently religious freedom oriented, nor pro-life oriented, nor for people in churches to be able to practice their faith freely. I mean, it's a hostile House of Representatives we have in the majority right now. But the fact that there are 46 in the U.S. Senate that have said, hey, we're behind this, we think this is great, that's very alarming. Now, if this passes, if the Senate decides to pass it, I personally don't think the president would sign this into law, personally. I think that would be very contrary to efforts in the past to further religious freedom and et cetera and parental rights. But if this became law, if the Senate passed this and it became law, or let's say it was brought up again next year, we had someone new in the White House and it was signed into law, what would it actually do? What are the consequences? And folks, I want you to listen to this, because to me, the Equality Act is the greatest legislative threat to civil liberties probably in my lifetime. That's how serious this is. So give us some examples. What are we talking about here, and what are the real consequences people need to be aware of?
Well, what the so-called Equality Act does is it amends, and I would say it rewrites the Civil Rights Act, firstly. That's what it's doing. They're taking a pen to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and rewriting it. And what they're doing, and what they claim, and I want to be really clear about this, they claim they're updating it. And what they're actually doing is redefining core terms like sex to include any type of sex stereotype, sexual orientation, or gender identity. And these very, very broad terms are self-selected.
Wow. Okay.
So it's completely relative.
Yeah, it's relative. It's very radical. So in other words, if I say I'm a woman, they have to treat me like a woman for purposes of the Civil Rights Act and all its provisions. Let's bring this to a little more concrete. An example. Let me give you one example. Like a girl in an athletic team she's there, she's competing, and she's in basketball, and or let's say it's a wrestling match, and a man, a teenage boy, is competing in this high school competition. He says, "I feel like I'm a woman. I'm going to join the female wrestling match. I'm going to compete." And it's this big guy. He has 10 times the testosterone, larger frame, larger muscle structure. I mean, men and women are very, very different. He decides he wants to join the team. Can he join the team? Can he compete against a female? And how realistic is this actually happening?
Well, it's already happening. We know that on a state level. And that can absolutely happen if this were to be passed on a national level. Because, again, this is a federal law. So we have states that are already having that problem. And they're, that's state by state. And this would completely take away any element of, the optionality for a state. And it would be a federally imposed anti-discrimination against sex, which includes gender identity. So if you identify as a girl, even though you were born and are a biological male, you absolutely can compete as a woman or a girl. And on a federal level, you cannot discriminate.
Okay, now let's say it's the winner of this competition gets a scholarship. Universities are giving scholarships, and let's say they're applying for, say, UCLA, okay? And they want to be on the wrestling team. They won this competition. They're clearly the best. And UCLA says, we're not going to have you as on our women's team. We don't want you on our women's team because you're a male, so we're not going to give you the scholarship. I mean, he'd have a lawsuit right there. In other words, universities, because it's federal statute, it would be discrimination if they treated him differently. So bottom line, in athletics, men would have a gold key to trump women and their young women and their opportunities that they wanted to have, which was the purpose. Part of the purpose of the Civil Rights Act is to give women, girls, the same opportunity for athletic and sports competitions. This would completely turn this on its head, and males would be able to trounce females in terms of their opportunities. A young male gets on the team, the girls booted off. This would apply to tennis, baseball, soccer, swimming, everything. And it would be an easy way for a male to have a full scholarship and to thwart the opposite sex to have the same opportunity. So I think that alone is outrageous. And anyone who's for truly equal rights, any feminists out there who are in favor of equal opportunity for women should be outraged. But it's not just dealing with that, it's also dealing with religious freedom. What about adoption agencies? Private, religious, say Christian, Orthodox Jewish, adoption agencies. How does this affect them and their ability to continue to serve the public in accordance with their faith?
It would be extremely prohibitive because they, again, cannot allow for any type of religious accommodation. And there is absolutely nothing in the Equality Act that allows for any protection for the religious liberty or freedom of conscience of any person.
Wow.
So, and some agencies, including Catholic Hospital's representative, has already come forward and said it would be all but impossible to operate under those conditions.
So if someone comes in, say a man comes in and he wants to have his gender changed, arguably a Catholic hospital would have to do it, whether or not they believe in it or not. They would have to forego other ethical issues in terms of an adoption. They would have to let a child, for example, who's already been traumatized perhaps, to be adopted by a gay couple, a lesbian couple, two transgenders. And mind you, I'm not in any way attacking the intentions of such people wanting to adopt. They probably have wonderful intentions. They probably want to have a child and love that child like anyone else. But, this private religious-based adoption agency should be able, I would contend, in a free society, be able to place that child where they feel God has called them to place that child. And that would be in a child with a family structure that's congruent with scriptural teachings about what a healthy family should be. And statistically, by the way, has proven to be, which would be for a man and a woman. So this would completely thwart them. I know they would basically, many of them would be set up to be taken out of business. What about businesses themselves, like a a baker or a florist or doing weddings or other kinds of businesses? Is there any religious opt-out for them having to?
Nothing.
Nothing.
There's absolutely nothing. So, we had the Masterpiece case, obviously, where you had the baker. You've had similar issues with florists. There's nothing for either people on an employee level or as an employer. If you're a Christian employer and want to have a Christian-run business and you think that any of those actions violate your faith federally across the nation, you would be obligated to take actions that you violate your conscience.
What about churches and ministries? Are they going to be impacted?
There's nothing in the legislation to protect them. Nothing.
Whoa. So a church, so someone say applies for a job as a youth minister, arguably the church would have to be willing to hire them, even though they later on found out that they were engaging in a same-sex sexual relationship or changed their gender or something else that they thought would not be good for the children in accordance with their faith and beliefs. Basically making it difficult for a church to carry out their faith, which is what the United States is about. Religious freedom is the most important fundamental civil liberty. This goes to the heart of that civil liberty and makes every church a sitting duck for a lawsuit and for liability. That's why we're addressing this. Now, we have this, real quickly, Emily, I want to let people know, we have this on our website, information about it. But we have something, in addition to that, a petition. Tell us more real quickly.
At our website, you will see there's a great video that explains what we've been talking about here, and there is a link that will take you to a petition, an online petition that spells out very clearly, again, not lawyer language, regular language that explains why it is that we are opposed to this petition, that we are opposed to this legislation, and asking the legislation to be stopped and protect people.
Right. And the website is pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org, or a shorter version is pji.org, pji.org. And folks, when you go to that website, take a look at the video, pass that video on, send it out. We need to educate America, particularly to hold people in public office accountable to know what's important. Is religious freedom important to you? Are parental rights important to you? Is your daughter's ability to compete fairly and equally in a public school competition, is that important? Well, then go to this website. It's your turn to speak up. If we don't, it's on the verge of potentially becoming law, if not this year, then next year. It's that important. Go to our website. Also, sign the petition, forward the video. Let's get this out. Let's make a difference. Emily, thank you very much for being on the program, and keep up the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We today pass the Equality Act and finally fully end discrimination against LGBTQ Americans.
Scare me with this Gestapo crap. I know my rights. I want my phone call.
Tell me, Mr. Anderson, what good is a phone call if you're unable to speak?
Yeah, Christians, Orthodox Jewish people, people with traditional religious beliefs who believe what the Bible says, they're going to be sitting targets. But they're not alone. This is also going to impact adoption agencies, Catholic charities. They effectively could be shut down as well unless they're forced to compromise their deeply held convictions. And folks, if you'd like to become a part of the Pacific Justice Institute, you don't want to just stand on the sidelines. You actually want to be a part of what we're doing. You believe in what we're doing. Go to our website. It's simply pacificjustice.org, pacificjustice.org. And there you can sign up to first off to receive our Legal Insider. This is once a week. It's short, it's brief, it's emailed, and it's an update on what we're handling. And if you're a prayer warrior, if you believe in prayer, this is a great opportunity to pray for our work because it's often things that we need immediate prayer for involving real people, real cases, real churches, real circumstances that we're dealing with. So also on our website, you can sign up to become a one-time donor or a regular monthly supporter. I can't tell you how grateful I am for those of you who step up to the plate and not just support us one time, but have become regular team members, regular monthly supporters of the work of the Pacific Justice Institute. It really means a lot. It gives us a lot of firepower for us to move forward. Any amount would be great. Just go to our website, pacificjustice.org, and every penny of that is tax deductible. We're a nonprofit 501c3 legal ministry. So I want to say up front, thank you to the many of you who are going to step up to the plate and become a part of our work at Pacific Justice. Now, to talk with us about a very important case, we have with us on the line Attorney Matt McReynolds in our Sacramento office. Matt, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Brad.
Now, Matt, this is a very important case. We have lots of cases in litigation, I know. We have over 40 cases, as last I checked, in active litigation. But this one is really a tender case because we're dealing here with a piano teacher who loves kids, wants to teach the kids piano lessons in a public charter school, and yet is told that she's not going to be allowed to do that. Give us a quick background on what this case is about.
Sure, Brad. Well, this case came to us after this piano teacher, who, as you mentioned, highly qualified, has been sought after, has been doing this a long time, was asked by the parents of her students, as well as the charter school itself, to become what they call an approved vendor. And this just means that parents can use their instructional set-aside dollars to fund the piano lessons that many of them were already availing themselves of with her. So she starts that process, Brad. She gets most of the way through it. She's actually told that she's going to be approved, but then an issue came up from the school about religious music.
Okay, religious music, that's not the only thing she's using and teaching, right? It's just a small part of it, correct?
Oh, absolutely not, Brad. It was just a very small part. And not only that, but we're talking about classic songs like Amazing Grace. We're talking about old spirituals like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot. But as soon as that topic came up, the charter school hit the brakes, and they told her, they started looking further into what she was doing. They said she would need to change the name of her piano studio because it was called His Song Piano. Very subtle, but to her, meaningful reference to her faith. And they told her, Brad, that she would have to tear out those songs like Amazing Grace, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot from her piano books in order to be able to continue with them.
Yeah, it's from her piano book. There's all kinds of songs in the piano book, all jazz and classical, I understand, contemporary. So it's a broad mix of different kinds of songs, correct?
Absolutely. We're talking about an accomplished piano teacher, classical, blues, gospel, all kinds of things. This was a small part of that.
Right. And we're also talking about classics like Amazing Grace. I mean, I saw a full special on a mainline TV network. It was like an hour-long special on the song Amazing Grace, and it's significant, and its significance as a part of our history, our heritage as a nation. Of course, Swing Low, Sweet Chariot is a very classical hymn, and it's also a part of our history, and that it was a song dealing with, it was an old black spiritual song dealing with slaves trying to be free and wanting to be free, and this was a part of the freedom movement that they were dealing with. So it's a very tender, precious part of American history and heritage. Both of these songs are, and yet they were removed out of this hostility to the fact that they mentioned God or they had some kind of spiritual significance, as if faith is somehow a menace to our society or somehow not an actual part of our history and heritage. And yet it's both of those are incorrect assumptions. As we look at this case, I'm very disturbed because it's apparent that it's really an attitude of government trying to sterilize from the open marketplace of ideas any evidence of faith, any convictions of faith, and this case I think is very concerning. Why do you think Americans should be particularly concerned about this case? Say they're not going to take piano lessons. Why should they be concerned about this case, Matt?
Well, a couple of reasons, Brad, but one in particular that jumps out at me is that we're not even talking about a traditional public school setting. We fight similar battles there. I think teaching songs that are this classic and this historical, there's a lot of reason to believe those would be permissible even in a public school. But, Brad, we're not even talking about a public school classroom. We're talking about an independent piano studio that parents choose to send their kids to and make individual choices about. And also, Brad, there are a lot of parents, homeschool parents in particular, who are going this direction with independent study charter school, and they're often lulled into thinking that these are going to be much friendlier environments for them until something like this happens. And, Brad, you could argue this is even more extreme than some of what we see in traditional public schools.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, the case law is clearly established that says public schools can have songs, religious songs, as well as secular songs. Like, for example, during Christmas time, they can have the kids sing Silent Night along with Jingle Bells. So public schools are actually fairly tolerant. Sometimes we have to get involved. But here we're dealing with a charter school, and you're right. The assumption is a charter school is going to be more tolerant, more parent-friendly, less hostile towards evidence of faith, less deophobic, if you will. But this charter school, unfortunately, is not such a school. It's a big disappointment. What's the latest on this court case? Where are we at, Matt, as we defend this piano teacher?
Well, Brad, we've been in hard-fought litigation on this for more than a year, and now the charter school's attorneys are moving for a second time to try to dismiss the case. And they're making a number of technical arguments that we won't get into here. But what else is really concerning is that they're making some core and very substantive legal arguments about the Constitution. And they're suggesting, Brad, that the Constitution would require them to exclude these classic historical songs and references from piano instruction, even outside the classroom and normal campus setting, even extending into this private studio. And that's very concerning to us. So right now we're putting together our opposition to push back hard against that notion.
Yeah, this is what you would call, I guess, a strict separationist perspective. The majority on the United States Supreme Court does not aspire to this perspective of strict separation. It's something that's, we who appreciate religious freedom do not favor this. It opens the door for state hostility and bigotry and discrimination against not only ideas of faith, but people of faith, like our client. And the fact that they were scrutinizing with regard to the name of her piano lessons business, his could stand for anything. But even if people knew what it stood for, that's her business. That's what she is. That's who she is. That's what she believes. So this should be very concerning. Now, Matt, looking forward on this case, what do you think is the timeline? What are the next parts of this case that we should be looking at that people who sign up to get our legal insider could expect to be updated on?
Well, Brad, we're headed toward an important court hearing on this case later in the month of March. And from there, I think it is very likely that this is a case that is going to go up on appeal and be in the appellate courts. It's in the state courts out here currently, so one of the California courts of appeal. And this could be a case that ultimately could establish some precedent, and we hope that'll be very positive precedent.
Right. Now, the state courts in California, unlike the federal courts, which have had some wonderful improvements because of court appointments by the President of the United States, the state courts are different. The President doesn't appoint new judges in our state court system. So we're going to deal. We have some challenges on the state courts with our state court system, and we had strategic reasons for bringing it in the state court. Well, folks, this is a very important case, and I encourage you to sign up to get our Legal Insiders so you can keep up to date with this case and the many other cases we have ongoing right now. We at Pacific Justice have a considerably high success rate in the cases that we take on because of the hard work of the attorneys that we have on staff, like Matt McReynolds, the attorneys that volunteer across the country to get involved in our cases, as well as the support that comes from people out there like you. I mean, we don't forget for one moment where, by God's grace, our bullets come from, to be able to step into the trenches and take on these cases to defend your rights and your civil liberties. So once again, if you'd like to become a part of our team, if you'd like to keep up with these cases and pray for our work, go to our website, pacificjustice.org. That's pacificjustice.org or pji.org, pji.org. Matt, I appreciate the hard work you're doing, and keep up your work as we continue to move ahead on this important case. Bottom line, folks, if we don't prevail on this case, then we're going to have greater hostility, greater empowerment for those who feel that they can get away with discriminating and being bigoted against people of faith and institutions of faith like this piano teacher. So, folks, there you have it. It's our God-given freedoms we're talking about. Now, let's choose to keep them. I'm Brad Dacus, president of the Pacific Justice Institute. Have a great weekend.